Okay, hair and makeup just left. Now we're going to start this rockin' video. Beth Rogers doing the biosocial theory. Take one. So, Kim, thanks for coming back.
You bet.
All right. Remember how we've talked about the first 4 sessions are really about checking to see if you fit for DBT and if DBT fits for you and all those things.
Yes.
And part of it is me giving you a lot of different pieces of DBT so that you can make an informed decision about whether or not you need this therapy.
Okay.
All right, so today we're going to talk about the biosocial theory. And I'm going to get up on the board and make some drawings to help because hopefully, well, I just don't want to bore you with just talking at you.
Perfect.
All right, so Linehan came up with a theory about why people need DBT. Well, actually, why borderline personality disorders developed. And there's 2 parts of it. There's the biological part, and there's the social part. That's the term biosocial theory. Makes sense, right?
It totally makes sense.
Okay, so kind of like nature and nurture, you've heard that before. So sometimes that's a little bit more familiar. So biologically and socially, she breaks it down into 2 pieces, 2 parts each. So biologically, there is people that can self-soothe and people that can't self-soothe. So I'm going to talk about that first.
Okay.
So you've been around kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, well, particularly babies, when they cry, what do?
Well, you can cuddle and give them love.
Right, you try and soothe them.
Yes.
And if they can't quiet down, then you check their diaper, you feed them, you burp them and all that, right?
Yeah.
So once you do all that, typically the baby soothes themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they can't self-soothe.
Okay.
So, and when I talk about not being able to self-soothe, you've seen that the McDonald's commercial where the guy's driving around, he goes through the drive-thru and he's like, I'll have a cappuccino. Remember that?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, so...
So the car keeps moving in motion?
Yes.
Exactly.
And he keeps driving around. He's got a baby in the back that can't self-soothe.
Right.
Okay. What happens as those babies grow up, we have found that those babies actually have a higher emotional baseline. So if we're looking at like a graph, and if, let's say this is the average Joe Blow's emotional baseline out there.
Okay.
What we're finding is people that seek out DBT and need DBT actually kind of hum at a higher level. So they have a higher emotional baseline, which means that they're more susceptible to emotional events.
Okay.
For example, when you were taking that pop quiz the other day in your class, and the teacher announced it, and everybody around you is kind of like, oh man, bummer, well, let's just get to it. And you were like, oh my God.
Freak.
And you couldn't even think. Remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's because, first of all, you're starting at a higher emotional baseline, and once you heard about the pop quiz, your emotions got higher, and then they just kind of stayed high because you couldn't self-soothe.
Okay.
These guys that have this lower emotional baseline and have the abilities to self-soothe, they were like, oh my gosh, pop quiz, okay, I can do it. They self-soothed and they went on with the quiz.
Okay.
All right, so that's the self-soothe piece, or the biological piece, excuse me. The social piece. Remember how during your intake you were telling me that when you were 14, one of the primary reasons that you self-harmed was to get validation?
Yes.
Yeah, and that is so tough. And that's the social piece. The social piece is being raised in an invalidating environment. Now, invalidation is on the spectrum. And the spectrum is from when you went through high school, they didn't teach you how to change a baby's diapers and how to take care of a baby, right?
No.
Okay, so if our society doesn't even teach you that part,
Right.
Our society certainly doesn't teach you how to teach a baby that can't self-soothe how to self-soothe.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the upper end or the lighter end of the spectrum, so to speak,
Mhm.
might be you being raised in a family that has all good intentions, all the intentions of wanting to teach you how to self-soothe and
Mhm.
wanting to teach you how to deal with your emotions, but just simply not knowing. It could be the world's greatest mom and dad or world's greatest mom and mom, but they just don't know how to teach you how to self-soothe.
Okay.
So that's way down here at this end of the spectrum. And then as we move along, it might be verbally invalidating environment, like, oh, come on, it's not that big a deal. Oh, buck up. I was, some friends of mine, we were at a softball game the other day, and I saw this kid slide into second, and he was obviously in pain. And the mom next to me was like, shake it off, brush it off, come on. And I'm like, oh my God, I hope you don't do that at home. So, as we move down the spectrum, we're looking at physical abuse. Well, actually, more like neglect here and then physical abuse. Can you imagine what the most invalidating environment might be?
I would say physical and mental abuse both.
Yeah. To me, in my head, in our world, the most invalidating environment would be war. Because I can't imagine anything more invalidating than someone trying to kill me. It's like, your life is so worthless
Right.
that I want to kill you. So I'm thinking of this as a war.
Okay.
Now, back to this, this is not a very good rendition here. So, biologically, self-soothe and can't, right?
Mm-hmm.
And socially, validating environment and invalidating. Now, we're coming down to 4 different scenarios.
Okay.
So, a little kid that comes into this world that can self-soothe, that's in a validating environment, that's the best of both worlds, right?
Right.
They're good to go. A kid that comes into the world that can't self-soothe, but through some miracle is taught through validation and other avenues
Mhm.
by their family and their environment how to self-soothe, or they're validated for their inability to self-soothe, and they're taught how to self-soothe.
Mm-hmm.
Good to go here. If somebody can self-soothe and is in an invalidating environment, wow, that's tough to say.
It is.
So,
I don't think I could have done it.
I don't think I can do it again. I'm not even gonna try. They can kind of muscle through it because they have that ability to self-soothe. This is why so many kids who are abused grow up and live relatively normal, natural, healing lives, because they have that innate ability to self-soothe, even though they may have been in here.
Okay.
That's why some people come back from war most people come back from war without PTSD, because they have that innate ability to self-soothe.
Oh, okay.
All right, so again, good to go. Here's where you end up needing DBT, where you have the difficulties, because you don't have the ability naturally to self-soothe,
Right.
and then coupled with an invalidating environment,
Like
you
a double
learn, yeah, it's a double whammy, right? And you learn skills to self-soothe that at the time work, but over time not work. Like in your case, when you were 14, you started self-harm. It worked for you for a couple of years, and then it stopped working. And then you changed to drinking and using drugs. And now what you're telling me, you're 21, you're getting ready to graduate, and drinking and using drugs doesn't work for you. Okay. So, lucky for you, and you're in the right spot, because we're going to teach you how to self-soothe. We're going to teach you a whole lot of other skills. The reason why I teach you this whole thing is to let you know that you're not this outlier, okay? You're not just some person on an island and you're the only one experiencing this. We've done studies on this. We know that we've done studies on the emotional part, and we know that there's a reason why you do what you do. Okay?
Makes sense.
And Have a great day, you guys.